Hi, it's Anne-Louise Sterry. Welcome to the fifth and final chapter of Santa's Moonbeam. We left off with Timothy walking once again down the snowy path, and me, my brother, my sister, and the dog following behind. Timothy had just told us we were going to the last stop on our adventure. We were excited. We were hoping it was going to be Santa's house. As we're walking down the path, the moon was shining down, and suddenly, right behind me, because I was the last one in line, I heard that sound. The sound that Timothy had told us before was the reindeer. I looked behind me, and there was a reindeer. He was enormous, way bigger than us, and he was just plodding along behind us. He had some red ribbon tied on his antlers. "Brother, sister," I said, "stop, turn around." We all stopped, and the reindeer stopped there. He picked his head up. He seemed to be smiling at us, and Timothy said, "Well, you can say hello to him, children." We went over to his head and started petting his soft reindeer face, and Dog was just sitting there looking with his tongue hanging out of his mouth. The reindeer seemed to be smiling at us, and he smelled like, well, I don't really know how to describe this, like how do reindeers smell, but he had a reindeer smell about him. Timothy said, "All right, come on, we're all going." We turned around and started walking behind Timothy again with reindeer following us. We didn't know which one it was, by the way. Didn't have a name tag on, so we were just calling him Reindeer. We walked down that long path toward that big house. Remember I told you about that? The big house that was at the end of the path. It had lots of windows covered with twinkle lights and a big red front door and a big chimney with smoke curling out. The eaves were covered in snow, and you could see the lights twinkling underneath them, and we walked to that house. And you know, it was Santa's house. We just knew it. The smell coming from that house was a mixture of chocolate chips and cinnamon and ginger and spaghetti gravy and all wonderful smells, anything you could think of, vanilla, all wrapped in one. I can't really explain it, but I remember it so well. Timothy knocked on the door, and it was opened by, of course, Mrs. Claus. She looked just like we imagined she would. She had white hair, and she had a big apron wrapped around her, and a beautiful smile. She said, "Children, come in." We tiptoed inside. Reindeer stayed outside, but Dog came in. We tiptoed inside. We were in a hallway, and off to one side was a big living room, and there was a fireplace at the end and a big chair in front of the fireplace, and in that chair, well, from the back, we saw a head of white hair, and we saw two black boots, big ones, by the fireplace. Mrs. Claus said, "Shh, children, he's sleeping. He's very tired. He has to rest up for the big trip, so we won't wake him up now." We just stood there. I was so excited I couldn't even say a word. So were my brother and sister. And after a moment, Mrs. Claus said, "Well, come into the kitchen so I can give you something for your journey." We went into the kitchen, and there was a big round table. Timothy was right with us, as always. And the table had plates covered with all the kinds of cookies that you can imagine that you would love. It had my favorite kind, which were the chocolate chip ones my grandmother made. It also had cinnamon roll-up cookies, my other favorite kind, oatmeal cookies, peanut butter cookies, brownies, anything you would have wanted. If you thought it, suddenly it was on the table. Mrs. Claus gave us each cups of hot chocolate with whipped cream, making a big sort of castle-like top on the top of the cup. We sat down, and she said, "Have whatever you want, children." And we started eating. You know, we were very hungry from our adventures, despite the fact that we had had gingerbread cookies and meatballs at some of the workshops. We just sat there munching with big smiles on our face. Dog sat on the floor, and in front of Dog, Mrs. Claus put a bowl that had, I don't know what kind of dog food, but Dog loved it. He couldn't stop eating. Timothy was munching away too. And after what seemed like forever, we started to get sleepy and full. Timothy said, "Children, it's time for me to take you back home." We didn't want to go. Timothy said, "Well, if I don't take you home, then you won't be there to wake up Christmas morning after Santa has been to your house." Mrs. Claus said, "If you would like to tell me, children, what you would like for Christmas, I'll tell him when he wakes up." So we each took a turn whispering into her ear our longings and wishes. She gave us each a big hug, and Dog too, and we walked back to the door. Timothy said, "Come on, I see our moonbeam," and there right on Santa's walk was a big circle of moonlight, the moon shining a beam right there. We sadly and happily waved goodbye to Mrs. Claus, and we stepped into the circle. Timothy said, "Now children, hold hands, don't forget." We grabbed hands, and Dog grabbed my little sister's robe. And before we knew it, plunkety, 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 blinkety, 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 blink, we were at the top of the moonbeam again, looking down one side at Santa's house and the workshops. Down the other side, we could see our little house. Timothy said, "Take a deep breath now. I don't want to lose you this time." And we grabbed each other more tightly and blinkety, 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 plonk, 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 plonk. We landed in the moonbeam on the floor of our bedroom. Timothy said, "Children, take off your robes and slippers and quick, get into bed." We did exactly that. And do you know, somehow we were asleep before we even knew that Timothy had left us to go back up that moonbeam. The dog was asleep too. The next morning, we woke up. I looked at my sister. She looked at me. I looked at my brother. He looked at me. I dreamt that. We all started talking at once. Could it be true? We all had the same dream. Did we really go to Santa's workshops? Did we really go up the moonbeam? Well, I, being the oldest and the wisest, said, "Oh, I don't think that could have happened. No, that could not have happened." Right then my mother called up, "Children, come on down for breakfast." We put our robes and slippers on, and we took Dog and started going down the stairs. And right when we got to the bottom, my little sister put her hand in her bathrobe pocket, and her eyes got wide. "Wait, you guys," she said, "wait a minute." And she pulled out from her pocket a chocolate chip cookie. We smiled at each other and went in to have breakfast with my mother. And that's the end of Santa's Moonbeam. Sleep tight, sweet dreams. Merry Christmas.